Hello, it's Freeman of Freedan Studios here. To start off these next 3 lessons, we're going to be texturing a cube. If you're wondering why we're going from this full model dolphin to just a simple cube again, that's because just like I was easing you into modeling using very simple shapes, I'm going to be easing you into texturing also using very simple shapes such as a cube. So that is the reason, and in order to kick things off, we're going to be using a physical paper cube to demonstrate the concept of seams. So Google a paper cube template, and once you have found one, just print it out, and you can pause the video while you do that and come back and we'll be ready to go. Once you have your cube printed out, cut out the image. Once you have your cutout, mark all of the edges that are unattached with a bright colored marker of your choice. Your cutout should now look something like this with all of these edges outlined, and you'll see that these 4 attached edges in here are not outlined. And you'll see the reason for that later, but now we're just going to start folding this cube. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to use these little tabs here, and you're going to attach them on the inside to the corresponding side. So when I fold this like so, I'll use this tab over here, attach it on the inside, and you'll see that makes the corner of the cube. Now I'm using tape because I don't have access to a glue stick right now, but it would probably be a lot easier to do this with a glue stick. So just if you need to know what materials to use. So there you go, there's one corner done, and you'll basically repeat that process for all of the rest up until you get to the top. So I'll get back to you then. And here's the box just before completion. I've just folded down these tabs of the lid, and I'll just close it and show you what the final thing looks like. There we go. And now there we have it. It's a final box with, you can see all the little markings you made. Those will come in handy later once I go into the Blender portion of this tutorial. So I will do a magical fancy transition and see you on the other side. Hello YouTube, this is Daniel Freeman back for part 6 of my Blender basic tutorial series. If I seem a little bit agitated throughout this, it's because this is my 3rd time attempting to record this. The first time I accidentally deleted all of my footage. The second time I accidentally used the wrong audio input, and the fans were, being really loud in the background. So yeah, I do apologize if I seem agitated. That would be why, because this is my 3rd time doing the same exact footage again. But anyways, we'll start out here with the basic cube. Open up a new screen as you saw in the previous modeling tutorials by clicking on this triangle and dragging. And in the bottom right or bottom left hand corner, I can't even think anymore, sheesh. In the bottom left hand corner, click on this symbol and go into UV image editor under editor type. Bam. There we go. And now go into edit mode, pressing tab, click on edge select, and select all of your edges that correspond with the physical paper cube that you made. So look at that for reference. Select everything on this cube that corresponds with those edges that are highlighted there. Right, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now click on Control E while still in edit mode. And this is your edges menu. Select Mark Seam from the Control E edges menu. Now that you've done that, select everything by pressing A, U. After you've pressed A, select the U key to go into the unwrapping menu and just select unwrap. And you'll see that this now appears. It looks very similar to what we started out with the flat paper, because what we did when we made the paper cube was we were essentially reverse unwrapping it. So, that gives you an idea of how this works. Okay, now that we have that, we're going to go into image, or UVs, I apologize, export UV layout. And we're going to export it as something we'll remember. So I exported mine as cube uv.png in my desktop. There we go, export UV layout, and now we're going to go into GIMP. What GIMP is it's a free alternative to Photoshop. It's a really great photo editor. You can download it from gimp.org. There will be a link in the description. So if you do not want to pay for Photoshop, you don't have the resources, or you feel like it's just too much money at this point, if you're just messing around, or if it's just too much money for you in general, then gimp.org is completely free and it works very well. So once you've done that, if you have GIMP open, you can also follow this in Photoshop. If you know how to use Photoshop, that is perfectly fine. You're going to go to your cube uv.png, select that, open it up. Oh man, I have this nagging feeling in the back of my mind that this footage is somehow going to be messed up. I'll try not to think about that. This one is not going to be deleted. This one is going to be the final one. I actually want to close GIMP because accidentally I opened this up after something. Okay, there we go. So there, bam, cubeuv.png. All right, there it is, just like it is in Blender. Now we've got that. We've opened it up, and that was done using UV, export UV layout. Now we're going to follow this folder structure here that I have. You'll see that you can make a little file structure here, and I'll pull up the image for you right now. This is the file structure that I use when I'm making textures for my models, and it makes things very organized, very easy to navigate, and it'll save you so much time in the long run when you use it. So I'm gonna get you familiar with it. First, we have our cubeuv.png. Now click on this little dog-eared page right here in this menu. If you see where my cursor is, that'll create a new layer. So add a new layer and rename this ambient occlusion, just like you saw. This is just a placeholder, but yeah, just like you saw in my picture that I showed. You can actually find the picture and the link in the description if you want to print that out. You now make a folder by clicking on the folder icon next to the dog ear page. Rename that to top. And now we'll just go about creating the same structure that you can see in the, why is strange. If I click and drag this onto a folder, there you go. If I click and drag this, it'll go into the folder. And I can also use these arrows to change the hierarchy of things. Additionally, I can click and drag and it'll change the hierarchy as well, so I can put things in the top and the bottom. Okay, now let's make another layer. I'm going to drag this out of the folder and just make it its own separate layer and name this base underscore layer. And I'll make a new folder, call this components, just like in the sheet that I gave you. Make a new layer, call it base. And we'll make a new layer and call this details. Nope, it's already details. Okay, that's good. We'll make a new layer, shading, and then last but not least, we will do highlights. And then I will show you how to use this structure and how it'll help you be organized when you're making textures for the dolphin. Okay. Now that we've got all of that, I'm going to go into my base layer, the very bottom base layer. Select all by going under the select tab and clicking on all. Now, if you see right here next to all, there's a little symbol with an A. This means Command A, and that just means that if I click on Command A, it'll perform this function. So anything with letters or keyboard shortcuts next to them, that's showing the keyboard shortcut to perform that command, so you don't have to go through the menu every time. Very handy to learn. So this says Command A, so I'm going to press Command A, and you'll see that it selects everything just like it says it would. You see these little moving dots are called marching ants, or that's what they're kind of known as in the photo editing world, and that just means that portion is what's selected. So everything that I do within a selected area is applied to the image. Now I'm going to change the color. I'm going to select this right here. This is the color palette, and if you click on it, you can change the foreground color. I'm going to make this you know, you can click and drag to change it to any color you want to. I'm just going to use the old green that I had in my previous attempt at recording. So I'll click OK. And then I want to fill all of the selected portion in the base layer. Important, make sure you have the base layer selected for this, not another layer. So make sure that's highlighted there. And now I'm going to, if you go to Edit, Fill with Foreground Color, you'll see that it fills everything in. And I'm going to use the shortcut indicated next to it. So I'll just click Command, comma. Bam. Everything is green now. And now if I export this, I'm going to, you always want to actually, I think I mentioned this before, but you definitely want to save this as an XCF file. So I'm going to save this as cubetexture.xcf. Now actually I didn't mention it in this attempt. So save this as cubetexture.xcf. This is extremely important because it'll preserve your layers. You do not want your, you know, you don't want to open this up and find your layers gone. So bam, save. Oh, wow, I guess I did mention it before. I don't even know anymore. Okay, well once that's done, you're going to want to export it. So when you export it, it becomes a flat image, and this is something that GIMP is going to be able to use as a texture, but it does not preserve your layers. So when you save this as a flat image and open it up, all of your layer, folder structure, it's all gone, and that would be very tragic. So yeah, make sure that you always save a flat version. Okay, cube texture, already replace it. Sadly, yes, that's what it looked like when I made the previous version. It's gonna replicate it though. Alright, so go into here, open desktop. I saved it as cube texture.png. You'll see that it now appears under the UV map when I just opened it through this menu right here. So there it is. You can also go to image, open image, and open something. Right, and now you can see that it hasn't affected the cube at all. No, this is because it's not in texture view. It's actually in solid view. If you look at the where you change the modes here, right next to that, it'll indicate what view you're in. So if I click on that, you can see that there's wireframe, which is, you know, you've seen that before in the modeling tutorial. That was when I pressed Z. I could go into wireframe view. There's solid view, which is the normal default view, and there's texture view. And now you see that the green is actually affecting our cube. However, we do want to get rid of this light. This is actually not a normal map. This is the light affecting the cube. So we're going to want to go into object mode and just kind of, yeah, we're just going to delete the light. Alrighty, and now you'll see there's some funny lines in the cube, and that's because I did not hide my UV reference inside of the image. So if I go into GIMP and this image, let me see what go to image properties and see what sizes. Okay, this is way too big. I'm gonna go into image, scale image, and I'm going to make this a 512 by 512 pixels. You'll see, so yeah, just width and height, image size under scale, image scale, and that'll take everything and make it smaller. And I'm doing this because I don't want the size to be that big, but I'll re-export it. Image reload. There you go. Okay, so now it's just smaller. Good. And the way that you keep this UV reference from being inside of the actual texture is by clicking on this little eye icon, and that'll hide it. So click on that, re-export. Once you do that, image reload, you'll see that now it doesn't have the kind of gross weird UV thing on it. But we also want to put a little bit of shading onto this. So if I go into, if I click on the cube, if I go into world settings right here, you'll see a little ambient occlusion option. Click on ambient occlusion, and then once you've selected that, go click on this camera here and scroll to the very bottom, and you'll see a bake option. If you click on, actually open up, make a new image before you do that. So image, new image, make sure it's 512 pixels by 512 pixels. Click OK. Go into tab, select everything, in this menu right here, where you see the name of the texture, click on that, go into your untitled image, your new one you created, change the name if you haven't already to ambient underscore occlusion. There we go. You can change that right here next to the menu where you selected that image. And now click on bake. That, again, that's just at the very bottom of this little menu with the camera. And that's going to add some pre-made shadows to our cube. You can also alter this if you add a light source. So I'll say I'll add a sun. So I'll add a sunlight. Nah, I'm not going to add a sun. I'll just add a point light. So, you know, if you add a light like the one that we deleted, you can change the direction by rotating it, and can also make the strength more or less. If you go into this menu right here, you'll see this little object data right here with this little sun icon. It actually is a sun right now. And you can change the strength of that. I'm just going to make it less by dragging this little slider. If you want to know about how to do lighting stuff, you can look up a lighting tutorial, but this will actually change the ambient occlusion map to reflect the shadows. Now I have to select the cube first. So now that I've selected the cube, I can change the occlusion map. And the reason the lighting changes the ambient occlusion map is ambient occlusion basically takes the shadows that are being cast onto your object and bakes them onto it. Think about it as shining a light onto an object and painting the shadows that light casts on the object by hand. Then once you've painted the shadows on, if you put the object into natural light where it's being lit from all sides, it's still going to look like it's shaded because you've painted the shadows in. So that's essentially what this is. I'm going to delete this sun now, and you will see now that there is, you know, you can kind of see the shading. This will be much more apparent when we do the dolphin. So I think it'd be better. For now, you just need to know that ambient occlusion exists and that it will be noticeably helpful once we start to get to the dolphin. But just name this cube occlusion. You can go into image, save as image, name this cube occlusion.png. Bam. Yeah. So just know how to create an ambient occlusion. And that's just by unwrapping and then, you know, go into world settings, selecting ambient occlusion, clicking on bake, all that. If you are confused, then be sure to rewatch that part because it'll be important.